Hey everybody, I'm Jeffrey Way and welcome back to CodeIgniter from Scratch Day 5. We took a week off there and I apologize for that, but I did feel that it might be a good idea to take a week off and focus on something different. In this case I focused on CSS3 tips before coming back just to kind of divide everything up a bit. But we are back and we're going to take a look. Everyone keeps requesting a CRUD tutorial, so in this one I'm going to show you how to create, read, update, and delete records with CodeIgniter. So I'm going to close this out. As always, feel free to sign up for a Plus account. We'd appreciate it. And I'm going to go to my website, and we're going to start from scratch. One of the hard things is when you get into CodeIgniter, remembering, okay, I have to auto-load this, I need to adjust the configuration, the database, and it's easy to forget. So I want to start from scratch. This is a fresh install. Okay, and we'll go ahead and delete that. I'm going to take this and rename it to CI Day 5. Let's open that up, and as always, we want to take the application. You don't have to do this, by the way, but I do. Take the application out from within the system, and now I'm going to take the folder and I'm going to drag it into TextMate so that we can begin. Okay, now, quick refresh. What do we need to start with? The first thing, if we are going to be working with CRUD operations, is we need a database to work with, correct? I already went ahead and we have our CI_series database. I have a table called data, and I just have complete gibberish title and content. Okay, pretty simple stuff. So what I'm going to do here is, Facebook is open. Let me close all that out. What I'm going to do here is, let's come back and let's set up our configuration options. First one, the base URL. Well, let's go ahead and view this in the browser. Open Start Page, and we are going to browse to CI Day 5. Okay, and we have our standard welcome. So let's come back and let's go ahead and change our base URL, just because it's good practice to do that ahead of time. Okay, let's come back. We may need to come back a little later, but that's fine for now. The next one, auto-load. As I mentioned previously, sometimes it's smart just to go ahead and auto-load common libraries. In this case, we're going to be working with a database, so let's auto-load that class. That might be okay for classes. For the helper, I always use the URL helper. Let's load that one, and let's also use the form helper. Also, we will auto-load a model, but I'm not going to do that just yet. Next, database. We need to enter our credentials so that CodeIgniter knows how to connect to our database. So the first root, I have it all wide open on my local server. Yours will be locked down once you move it over to your host. And if you remember, the database was called CI_series. All right, good. Let's see, routes. The default controller, we can change that. We will call this site, will be the controller that we create. And scaffolding, remind me if I don't do it this episode to teach you guys about scaffolding. It's actually been deprecated, but it's kind of a neat little feature that you can use if you are smart about it. So I will try to go over that either today or next week. Okay, so that should be okay for configuration. The next thing what we want to do is, let's start with our model. So if we know we're going to call our controller site, let's call its respective model site_model. All right. Class site model, and it extends model. And let's just go ahead and get all of our database functionality into here, because sometimes it's easy to just do a quick update from the controller. And the great thing about CodeIgniter is it allows you to do that. You can be as strict or as liberal as you want when it comes to adhering to the MVC principles. But here we're going to make sure all database interactivity is from the model. So the first one is we need a method to just get all the records. So we'll call it getRecords. And we're going to do query equals this db get, and that name of our table is called data. Whoops. And then we're going to return query result. Okay, we're going to return the result from that select statement. That's it for that one. Easy. Let's do another one. Function add record. And what we'll do here is we're going to do this, and this is going to be for our insert statement. this DB. Remember, we have access to DB because we auto-loaded the database class. And we're going to call the insert method. And it needs to know first the name of the name of the table that we're inserting into is data. And the next one is, what are we inserting? We're going to insert some kind of data. And we haven't set it up yet, but we know that we will have data to enter, so we'll just leave it as that variable or as an array, and we'll be sure to accept that. And we might do something else, not sure. Just hit return from now. Next, update. We need to be able to update a record. So update. And this time will be this DB, and with an update statement, obviously, we need to be able to say update this record where its ID field is equal to X, right? So where, and we're just going to hard code this one in just because it's a little difficult to simulate that. So where the ID is, I don't know, let's see something that's already in our database. 14, that sounds good. Where the ID is equal to 14, we're going to update, once again, data, and we're going to update it with some more data that we pass to this model. So we'll be sure to accept that. And then the final one is we have, what do we have? Get, update, add, and delete. So we'll do delete row, and we're going to say this DB, and by the way, we're using active records. It's built into CodeIgniter to simplify the process. This DB where, and we're going to say where the ID is equal to, and in order to delete an item, we need to be able to figure out which item are we deleting. So maybe we need a way to pass through the respective ID of a returned row. It's a little hard to explain, so maybe we'll grab an item's row ID, and then if you click on it, we'll send that ID to the model, so the model will know, okay, only delete the row that has this ID. Hopefully that makes sense. So we'll pass that through a query string. So where the ID is equal to this URI, and I haven't showed you this yet, I don't believe. And let me just go ahead and do this, and I'll come right back to it. This DB delete, and we're going to delete data. Okay, so this URI is a CodeIgniter class, and it's automatically loaded. You don't have to do it for yourself. You don't need to worry about that. And segment is, let's say we have a URL. Let's come back to our page. Segment refers to, let's say, our main class is site. The method, let's say we don't even have a method, but we'll say it's index, and the third one we'll say 4. Okay, segment is 1, 2, and 3 here. We can have actually as many as we want. The controller will be the first segment. The method of the controller is the second segment, and any additional values that we want to pass would be in the third, fourth, fifth segments. So we want to pass something like this URL to our model, and then the model is going to grab that URL and find the third segment or the row's ID and only delete the row with that number. All right, hopefully that makes sense. And I think that's fine. We could get more complicated, but I think this will be a good introductory to simple CRUD operations. Okay, so that is our model. The next thing I want to do is get started with our controller. So let's find our controller, create a new controller, and we're going to call it site. Class site extends controller. And we will say the first one is going to be that index function, and that will just automatically run when the controller is loaded. So what we want to do here is just load our main view that we're going to be working with. So this load view, and I'm going to create a view where you have all of your options, where you can insert an item, read an item, delete and update all on that one page, just for simplicity. So let's call it something like options of view. And ultimately, we'll revise this and add some more. But for now, let's go ahead and load the view. Okay. The next thing is, okay, Now, let's create an h2 tag, and we're going to create each of those options. So the first one we'll do is create, and this will be to demonstrate inserting records. And we're going to make use of the form helper that we auto-loaded. So PHP, and I believe I've showed you this, echo form open. And here we're going to pass in all of those segments. So we're only going to load 2 segments. We're going to send the user to the site controller and the create method. And we're also going to close that form. So when the user loads the site controller, this function will run automatically, and it's just going to load options view. And options view for now will just have this. So let's save it and make sure that we are running correctly. And nothing is loading. Give me just a moment. Oh, I know what the problem is. If we come back to config, you'll see here I'm using one single quote here and a double quote at the end, and that's throwing it off. You know, it's those little things that can really confuse you. And if we load it, all right, we are getting that. And let's view source, and you can see that form that that simple echo that we did created our complete path to the create method. So now we just need to add a couple input tags for the user to add some data and send it on. So I'm going to go back to my options view, and we are going to add our data. So we'll just do a paragraph tag, and we're going to do a label. And this first one is going to be for the title. And we're going to do input. As always, if you don't want to watch the boring stuff, you can always fast forward. Input type equals text. Name equals title. ID equals title as well for the label. And that should be good. And we need another one for the contents. Content, and realistically that should probably be a text area, but who cares? That's fine for now. And then of course, lastly, we need a button. Submit. Come back, refresh the page, and now we have it. Okay, so that looks fine. The only thing I'm going to do here, and once again, this should be put into an external style sheet, but we're only doing one property. Display, and we don't have much time here. All right, that looks fine. So when the user clicks submit, the information from these 2 text boxes is going to be posted to the site controller, and the create method. So from the create method, we then want to grab that information from the post global, and then we're going to send that on to the model. The model is going to receive that information and update the database, or in this case, insert into the database. Okay, so add that information. It's going to be sent to a create. Did I call it create? Create, yes. Function create. I'm sorry, I usually have notes, and I'm not working off notes today. The first thing we'll do is create an array. So it'd be called data. This is, you'll see this happen often. First one is going to be the first item in our table, which is title, and the other one is content. So title is going to be equal to this input post. This is the same thing, if I haven't showed you, it's the same as doing post title. Okay, same thing. Now, you do need to worry about XSS filtering, and there's a way to turn on global filtering. And I'll show you that in just a little bit. It's from the config. That way we don't really have to worry about it too much. So the title, and the next one we're going to do is content. This input post content. All right, so there's our data array. These 2, just to clarify, this one's going to hold whatever is typed into that title text box, and this will return whatever in the content text box. So now we just need to do this site model. So how do we have access to site model, and what is site model? Remember, site model is the model we created, but the only way we have access to it like this is because we need to auto load the model. Like so. And now we don't have to do it ourselves with every function or in a construct function. So this site model, and we're going to call this add record. Is that what we called it? Yeah, we want to call that method. So if we come back and take a look, add record, we need to pass in information so that this method knows what to insert into the database. And here's what we're going to pass in. Now we don't need to do the ID field because the ID field will auto increment. So that should be just fine. And then once that's done, what should we do next? Let's just send the user back to this main options page. So what I'm going to do here is just do this index, and I'm calling the index method within this class. So we're just going to reload this information. And I'm going to tell you why I did it this way in just a little bit. So we receive the posted information, we call the model receives the posted information, the model calls and makes an insert query using active records, and then it just is returned. So let's see if it works. I'm going to refresh the page, and this is my newly created row. This is some content. There might be a mistake, I don't know. Click submit, and we are directed right back here. So let's click on browse, and look, my newly created row. Wonderful. So now let's go back and work on the next one. Let's do read. So what I'll do here to separate these two, just use one of those old HR tags. Okay, so this is going to require a little bit more work, but let's go ahead and get into it. Let's come back to our site, and we need to, we've already done a model. I'm sorry, I'm stumbling on my words. We've already created a model to get all the records. So let's just add it in this index function right here. So let's do, we're going to do an if query, and we're going to go if create a new variable query equals this site model once again, and we're going to call get records. And that's just going to grab all of those records. Now, if something is returned, hence the if statement, then we're going to create a new data item called records, and that's going to be equal to whatever was returned to that query. Then we'll do this load view, and we're going to load. We already have it up here, so let's just grab that and load that. And then to pass that variable, we'll just do a comma and add that data. Now, we have to think, what if no rows were returned? This if statement will return false, in which case this data variable is never created. And that is why we should go to the very top. You might have seen this, and we'll just go ahead and make data equal to an array. That way at least something will be passed and we don't get an error. And that's why you see it done that way, if you ever wondered. So that looks good. So we got the model, we got this information, we're loading the view, we're passing the returned rows via this data array, which we will then be able to access as just a single records variable to the options view. So now, from the options view, we can do just some quick PHP. We'll do PHP if is set, if that records variable does exist, because it's possible it doesn't exist if there are no rows returned, so we'll do it that way. If records exists, then we're going to do a shorthand for each statement. So for each records as row, and down here we'll do an else statement, what to do if there are no records there, and then finally an end if. Okay, so the first thing we'll do is an h2 tag, and we're going to do PHP echo row title. Ooh. And the final one is we'll just wrap it in a div, and we'll do PHP echo row content. Okay. Now that is if the records exist. If it doesn't, then what should we do? In which case we'll just do an h3 tag and write no, or an h2 tag, no, records were returned. And we can clean this up, but I'm being very quick about all of this. No records returned, and then finally our end-if statement. Okay. Come back, refresh the page. And we do have a mistake, which is probably on my part. There it is. We have our for each statement, but I forgot to close out the end for each. So let's do that right there. End for each. And then we have our else, like that. Refresh the page, and no records were returned. So we know there are records. And of course, let's go ahead and get rid of that. Okay, refresh the page, and there we go. So now we have read our content. Displayed it right there. Okay, so the next one we want to do, let's come back to Options View, and we have Create and Read. Let's do Delete. And the way we'll do this one is to sample the delete method, simply click on the headings listed above. Delete query will automatically run. That should be fine. Okay, so basically what I want to do is just say if you want to delete any of these items, just click on the heading, one of these headings, and it'll automatically run. So what we need to do then is update our read method. So when we have our h2, we need to have that be an anchor tag as well. But rather than just creating a simple HTML anchor tag, why don't we utilize CodeIgniter to make it easier for ourselves? So here we're going to do PHP. This time we're going to do echo an anchor tag, and this is available to us from the URL helper, and we're going to anchor. And it's going to accept a few parameters. The first one is going to be where are we sending the user to? What's the href? And so it's going to be site, the site controller, the delete method, and we need to send a third segment, and this is going to be the ID of the row that we want to delete. Well, when we filter through all of these items, you can see we filter through and we do each row's title and then each row's content. But we can also store each row's ID as well. And we're going to store that in this anchor tag. So delete, and then we're going to do row ID. Okay? And that is why I used double quotes. If we use single quotes here, that would not work because it would not read the PHP. The next one is going to be what will be the value of the anchor tag. In this case, it's going to be the title, right? Clean this up just a little bit. And then we could do a third one if we want, and that would be any attributes that we would add, like class, ID, things of that nature. Come back, see if I made a mistake. And now they're links, and if I hover over it, let me move this up a little bit. If I hover over it and you look at the bottom left-hand corner, you can see the URLs to site delete 16, delete 14, delete 12, delete 10, delete 11. Now we have a trigger because we send that to the delete method. The delete method grabs that ID and only deletes the row in the database that has that ID. So the anchor tag is going to send us to site delete. Let's go ahead and create that one right now. Let me think for just a moment. This should be relatively easy. We're going to do this site model, and let's see what it's called. It's called delete row. So we're going to call that method, and let's see. we could do it one way. We could pass the third segment directly to the model, or the model could just pick it up itself. As far as best practice, I don't really know. It might be best practice to send it through, but we're not going to do it because I'm running high on time. And then when that's finished, let's just reload the index function as well. So now, delete. We're going to delete where the ID is equal to that third segment that we passed through. And delete data. So let's see if that worked. Oh, and just to clarify, when this model method runs, we will come back, and then it's going to run here, right here, this index. And once again, we're just going to load that options view. Refresh the page, and let's delete my newly created row. And look at it, it's gone. And we reloaded the page. So let's browse again, and my newly created, that's a newly, that's not the same one. So let's create another one, fresh, just to be sure. Yeah, and it's working. So the final thing I need to show you is the update is a little tricky, just because I'd have to do a lot of work to show you how you could select an item to update. So we're just going to do this manually. And let's find an item. Let's update the item with an ID of 12. So ID of 12. And we're going to update data with data that's passed in. So we need to create a update function. We'll do it right here. And we'll do, let's create our data array. And once again, all we need is title. So title is going to be equal to my freshly updated title. And the next one is going to be content. It's going to be content should go here. It's updated. Okay, and that should be fine. So now we just need to call this site model update. We called it update record, and let's pass data. All right, so we're just going to we're hard coding all of this in. We're not grabbing it. When we load the update method, it's going to create a data array. We're going to call the update record model method. Model method will accept that new information. It's going to update the row in the database that has an ID of 12, and then we call update. So let's come here, and right here we're going to go site update. And nothing happens, but let's go into phpMyAdmin and see if anything changed. And my freshly updated title. So it did work. All right, that's everything I wanted to show you today. This is kind of the simplistic version. We're using active records. You can get much more complicated as you want, but this will give you a good idea of how to create, read, update, and delete. As far as scouring your data, CodeIgniter does a lot for you. If we want to do global XSS filtering, meaning when there's any time there's a get or post variable sent, it'll automatically filter that. We can tell CodeIgniter to do that for us. And if I go to the config folder, and I'm not sure where it is, but let's do a search for global or XSS, and there it is. Global XSS filtering, let's set that to true. And now we don't have to worry about that. So load index. So now you know how to create a record, my new record, some content. There it is. We know how to delete records, just like so. And we know how to read records, and we know how to update. So thank you guys so much. Let me know what you would like to learn in day 6. As always, be sure to follow net.touchplus.com on Twitter. Be considering our Plus membership. We even have CodeIgniter tutorials on there, along with tons of great screencasts. And I thank you guys so much for being members, and I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.